Social Security, and the big changes that could be taking place. I have all the details and what you need to know right here in the video, so let's get right into it. Alright, now this is actually very interesting that I certainly want you to know about. The column that I'm going to be referring to in this video is suggesting Social Security has the capacity to double in size. In other words, send out twice as much for all of the beneficiaries every single month, based on some of the other programs right here in the United States that are already spending billions upon billions of dollars every single month, and compared to some of our allies all across the globe. This is actually really interesting information. I have all the numbers and the full breakdown for you in this video, so let's get into it and discuss all of these details. However, really fast before we do, if you're new here or if you haven't done so yet, please make sure to subscribe by hitting that button right down below the video, as I'm here for you each and every day right by your side as your one and only daily advocate, and I am very much dedicated to you and this community to continue doing all the research to find very interesting and helpful information just like what I'm going to be sharing with you in this video, as well as anything else out there right now as it pertains to money, benefits, checks, raises, programs, or anything else that we can possibly take advantage of or that we certainly want to know about that's working its way through Congress right here, right now. So again, thanks so much for joining me. Please make sure to subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet so you don't miss any updates going forward. And let's get into all the details on this column and what they are actually suggesting here. This is actually really interesting. So let's talk through all the numbers and what this all means going forward. So here's what they're doing. They're comparing as much money that Social Security is spending on an annualized basis compared to GDP, in other words, gross domestic product. How much do we actually produce and how much do we actually contribute right here in the United States on an annualized basis? Well, for this year in 2022, they're projecting $25 trillion of GDP. In other words, total output, right? How much do we output here in the United States? And they project $25 trillion for this year. So let me walk you through some of these estimates and what they're actually projecting here out into the future. And then I will talk about some of the allies that we have all across the globe right now who actually have significantly higher spending on programs similar to Social Security in their countries. And you can see how this column is suggesting that we could easily double Social Security or possibly even more than that, and we'd be totally fine. So very interesting, right? Let me talk you through these details. All right, so the report goes on to show that this year in 2022, expected GDP, in other words, total output, like I just said, is $25 trillion. However, a percentage of that, total percentage of Social Security output, in other words, how much money is going out of the door from Social Security, is 4.98% of total GDP. So we're less than 5% of the total output here in the country is actually going out the door in the form of Social Security payments, okay? So less than 5%, 4.98% going out this year in 2022 as a percentage of GDP. Now, again, stick with me on this because these are projections out into the future, but again, it's going to paint the picture as far as how much this program could actually kind of expand here going forward. Now, if we look out about 50 years, out until 2075, so a little more than 50 years going out from right now, they're projecting GDP at $208 trillion. That's a ton, by the way, right? Wow. That's unbelievable. So they're expecting in the year 2075, they're expecting total GDP that year to be $208 trillion. Well, at the same time, they're also expecting Social Security and these benefits to be 6.18% of GDP. Again, a teeny tiny fraction, right? We've only gone up about 1.2% over that same amount of time, that 50-year period of time, right? While GDP has expanded almost tenfold, and these benefits have only expanded by 1.2%. Does that make sense? Not really. All right, so let's keep going here because it's also very interesting. So as we extend out to the year 2100, so about 78 years from right now, 78 years from right now. So 2100, and again, I know this is kind of reaching out there, but again, it all kind of paints the big picture here. Again, for the year 2100, they're projecting GDP to be $574 trillion. Again, that's a ton of money. I'm not really sure how they're getting these numbers, but that is unbelievable, right? More than half of $1 quadrillion. Yeah, try to write that one out. You're going to miss a couple commas, I promise you. Seriously, that is an unbelievable amount of money. But my point is, that is their GDP projection for the year 2100. However, at the same time, they're projecting that these programs, as in Social Security, will then be paying out 5.87% of GDP at that time. Again, a teeny tiny fraction. So we're only paying out a little over 6% at the max of total GDP for all of these massive programs. However, now let's bring it all back and put it into perspective here to see what are some of our other allies all across the globe right now actually sending out in the form of payments to their citizens in the form of very similar Social Security type programs. Now again, not every country out in the world has Social Security, but they have other programs like pension type programs that are sent out from the federal governments, right? From the governments in these respective countries. They're all called something different, but essentially we all have, or many of these countries anyway, do have programs very similar to Social Security, right? Where they send out payments to older adults as retirement benefits. They send it out to people with disabilities. They send it out to low income and struggling individuals out there. So many of the countries have very similar programs like this. They're just all called something different. However, now let's look at these other countries around the world here that are once again our allies, and let's compare their spending to these programs based on their GDP. Now get this, Japan, they spend 10.5% of their GDP on these very similar programs. So essentially, they spend more than double of their total output, as in GDP, on an annualized basis to these very similar programs. That would suggest right here, right now, that in the United States, we could literally double Social Security and we'd still be behind Japan. Kind of see what I'm saying here? Yeah, interesting, right? Well, get this. France, they spend more than 15.3% of their GDP on, again, social programs like Social Security or their equivalent in that country. Again, they're 3 times more than the United States. So in the comparison of France, we could literally triple we could triple Social Security and we'd still be behind France. Again, right? So as a percentage of GDP, we're spending a significantly less amount than some of these other countries. Now get this, Germany, 12.5% of their GDP is sent out in the form of these programs, like a Social Security equivalent, right? So again, we're more than double, or we could double Social Security once again, and we're still way behind even Germany. So my point here is, and what this column and this report is actually suggesting is that we could easily double the output of Social Security and we'd still be behind other developed countries that we are allies with all across the globe right now. So we can kind of see here, even in the best case scenario, out 50 years from right now in 2075, it's actually a little more than 50 years, but let's just call it 50 years. If we fast forward even 50 years, best case scenario, with GDP being $208 trillion, we're still only spending 6.18% of that money on these social programs, right? So you can kind of see here, the United States kind of behind the times here when it comes out to actually making sure that the older adults, the elderly, people with disabilities, the low income, fixed income are actually being taken care of kind of in the country, right? So you can kind of see here with these examples, even though I kind of gave projections out 50 years, 75 years, things like this, because that's what the report was doing, it's still very interesting to see that even way out in the best case scenario, we're still way behind some of these other countries. So anyway, basically the report goes on to say that we could easily double Social Security. We could easily double, and we'd still be behind as a function of a percentage of GDP, right? So anyway, wow. So anyway, like I said, what was it, a video a couple days ago, we were talking about the Board of Trustees, the Social Security Board of Trustees, and their annual report that came out. Well, what's interesting about that is they said that this year, no. Is it this year or next year? I think it's next year. I apologize. I'm forgetting the year now. I think it's next year, in 2023. It's projected that they're going to send out, in the form of benefits between all the retirees and disability and survivors benefits, between all of these benefits, $1.1698 trillion. And again, we're expecting about $25+ trillion in GDP. You can kind of see, right? We're way behind the times here. So anyway, I thought this was very interesting. I like to read stuff like this to kind of get a better perspective on what is the program really doing? What are we actually doing here in the United States versus other countries out there that are kind of, in line with what the United States is doing? Well, we can kind of see we're way behind. Let's just put it that way. So I don't know, very interesting. But also the article did go on to mention that the Social Security 2100 would also help to alleviate a little bit of this gap, but it certainly would not change it all that much. But it would also help a little bit as far as raising benefits and putting in some of those minimum floors, things like that for a big percentage of the beneficiaries. So Anyway, wow. Pretty big numbers, right? Yeah, unbelievable. And I know that this projects out into the future pretty far, but here's the thing. This is what the report is showing. And again, with Social Security and the Board of Trustees, they project out 75 years. So, yeah, you got to kind of look at stuff like this. When it's encompassing 65 to 70 million beneficiaries, and they're talking about trillions of dollars, you have to project out that far. You can't project out like 1 year. That's going to be a really bad situation. So we should be grateful that these people are projecting out that far because they have a big picture view on what is actually going on rather than just, hey, we're going to wing it for the next 3 years here and see how things go. No, Social Security would not be around anymore if that's how they were doing it, right? No, you got to project way out into the future to kind of get a better handle on what's actually going on. Anyway, I thought this was pretty interesting. Want to share it with you right here in the video. So, as I do get more details on anything pertaining to Social Security or fixed income benefits, even SSI, SSDI, survivors, SSI, retirement, seniors, older adults, people with disabilities, anything like this, of course, I'll be right back here for you, breaking it down and letting you know what is going on out there, as well as all the interesting information that I'm finding with the research that I'm doing. So, hope you're having a nice day so far. Please make sure to subscribe down below. If you haven't done so yet, share the video with your friends, family, social media, and go back and check out some of the other thousands of videos right here on the channel. And I'll continue to be here for you each and every day with the latest details and keeping you updated with everything going on. All right, until next time, enjoy, and I'll see you again soon in the next video.